happened to the light? So any general question for the audience, from the audience for the authors? So I want to ask a general question about personalization. So obviously, so one can discuss whether personal informatics requires necessarily personalization, but if it does, how much personalization do we need? In all scenarios do we need personalization, and how much personalization is needed? So I think your work in the bias was really interesting in terms of, so I would like to hear your thoughts first.
So, well, this is a little bit counterintuitive because I started going into fairness in machine learning because I worked with personalization, and I believed it could be a way to improve fairness in personal informatics. What I actually found out is that the personalized models, at least the ones I was using, actually amplified biases that were already existing in the data. So many times we hear that personalization can solve all the problems. I do believe we still need to be careful depending on the implementation. And yeah, for example, like a use case that I encountered was that in the data, in the My Heart Counts data, you have diabetes patients who, for whatever reason, perform less physical activity in the data. The personalized model kind of caught up on that, and when you use the personalized model just for diabetes patients, it ended up giving low activity goals to everybody, regardless of whether they would be an active individual or not. So I think there is like more research need to be done on these aspects of personalization as well.
Anybody else wants to reflect on that?
I think I might just kind of take it from a bit of a different angle. I've definitely been more on like the applied side, building systems that people use, and I really think that personalization is one of the next steps that we need to focus on in terms of allowing a user to build a custom or personalized visualization, or being able to set up. Apple does this a little bit where you can actually order the metrics on your screens and things like that, but I think it's a very different angle from what you were talking, but I do believe that that's a step that we really need to push forward into. I think we need to allow people to personalize these systems for themselves so that greater adoption will happen, less abandonment, things like that. So I see it as being quite important from that end.
I mean, so my work focused on personalization a lot, but I won't talk about that. I think another part that's important is the delivery, where everyone's motivated by different things. Some people have intrinsic motivators, some will have external motivators, and you need to have some form of personalization to make sure that your system is helping the person be motivated for whatever reason will actually speak to them, help them stay with the system.
I have a follow-up question on your work. Wrap it in the context of personalizations and misuse this time to ask. So you did an excellent job in creating those patterns, building a sort of music or human behavior. Can I get your patterns of data, feed it into the AI generated music, like Magenta or Fusion, I cannot recall the name from Google, and have a source of constructing a music that is related to the human behavior by those patterns that you listed, the differences between pitch. So I should yeah, that's my question. Unfortunately, nobody here did.
Yeah, so looking at direct mappings from the data to music is actually something that we started off looking at. The problem that we ran into was it just didn't sound good. Naturally, since we started looking at it, there's been a big boom in generative AI, which can probably make it sound good. That's something that we're actually looking at right now, but I would assume it's possible. We don't have any results for that at the moment.
Well, I guess I would just say, sort of in response to what you were saying a minute ago, that I think that this kind of customization is actually a way that you can take some of these barriers and facilitators that we found in our work and actually incorporate them into your personal informatics system. I think when you're a researcher developing a personal informatics system to test an idea, it's not really a fully fledged system most of the time, right? You're testing something specific. But if you're trying to make something that is going to be sort of more broadly applicable to a broader community, then thinking about all of those different barriers and facilitators to interacting with the personal informatics system, the only way to manage them is by sort of picking out the ones that make the most sense for different individuals. And probably that's going to be, I don't know if it's exactly personalization or maybe it's more just customization, but it's something in that space.
That's an excellent. Yeah, I had that follow-up. Yeah, there is a difference, I guess, between customization and personalization, and who makes that difference? So if we allow the user to personalize, is that we call personalization? Or better question probably is, do we as developers or builders of the systems should decide on the personalization, or is it just end user? Do they actually know? If we hand it to them, first of all, I think in the development would be a little bit challenging to do that. But if it is possible, would it be the best way of doing it? Just allow the users to decide what type of personalizations they want, or what level of personalization they would need. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
My 2 cents, and I'll pass off the mic, is that this really, this cuts to the core of HCI in the sense that, anybody that creates any system is sort of imposing their will on the users of that system, and we don't really have a good mechanism for doing something else. So as long as that exists, the people that are creating the software are always going to be making some of those decisions for the users. I think maximizing putting the control in users' hands is probably a worthy endeavor, but with a grain of salt.
So as long as we do that, maybe we also contribute to biases in the system. I don't know, unless we remove ourselves from that completely, I don't know how we can remove the bias that is created in the data. Right, sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, I think that there's definitely trade-offs, because what you increase in terms of allowing for customization and personalization, you may take away from simplicity and sometimes even usability, and that can really create obstacles to some people who want to engage with it.
The audience are very quiet. So.
Can I respond as well to your question? Because I've been thinking a lot about metrics in the context of fitness trackers. And I think what we see over there is that people automatically customize. They just tend to ignore the metrics, for instance, that don't make sense to them. And somehow, through connecting the metrics to their higher level goals, they decide for themselves, okay, this is a relevant metric and this isn't. So when it comes, for instance, to if you are a triathlete, then a metric such as VO2 max makes a lot of sense. So the psychological distance between your goal and the metric is much lower or smaller when it comes to someone who is just tracking for the sake of their health or how they're feeling. I do think that it would be interesting also when it comes to fitness trackers if the device could also sometimes make a recommendation. Like, okay, we see that this is your goal. Maybe it's more interesting to also take a look at the body battery, or perhaps this one is also interesting to follow for your personal situation.
Great. Somebody has a question.
Hello. Yeah, really good talks from everybody. Something that I was just kind of thinking about, and something that's been touched on by a lot of y'all already, is this idea of kind of integration into people's sort of daily lives and the kind of infringing that some software sometimes kind of does. I was wondering if any of y'all have kind of considered maybe like generative design methodologies, like whether it be participatory design or co-design or kind of user-centered design, and maybe guiding the development and research of some of these technologies to maybe enable, I guess, more seamless integration into people's lives, since stakeholders are kind of considered at the start rather than, hey, we built something, what do you think?
I mean, in our case, design was a huge part of the process in terms of developing the narratives and understanding what resonates with people. That was a very long, very involved process, and I think that really helped, reach the app experience. It would be, I mean, I think all of us probably do some level of, user participatory design, and yeah, feel free to jump.
I think it's a fantastic question, and so much so that I just want to highlight, I think it's actually come up in 2 of the other sessions I have attended, one today and one yesterday, where we have to focus on the user first, right? I think you're very right that as researchers, we tend to sometimes think of a product or think of a tool, build it, and then study it, as you mentioned, for a very specific purpose, right, where there's a goal in mind. But I think having that user-centered design, that user first, is huge, and we saw it there. I know we've seen it a lot for smartwatch visualization research. There's been a lot of participatory design sessions and things, and I just want to say that I do think it's super important and something to keep doing before going out and building those tools.
I know we are out of time, so I just wanted to thank all the authors once again, and thank you for joining us. So yeah, thank you.